Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, indeed, better regulation is one of the major political projects of the European Commission, and we are now approaching the decisive and crucial phase. And this week, the Commission will hold a seminar to prepare the agenda of the Commission for the remaining 14 months of our term, and I've already discussed it with President Barroso, and we both agree that better regulation will be at top of the agenda for the remaining time. We will explain you later why it is now so important and why we couldn't do it earlier. It is obvious that what used to be a merely technical and bureaucratic exercise in the past is today our key instrument to change the political culture of European legislation from top to bottom. And by the way, the same way to change the administrative culture in the European Commission, which is more or less unchanged since 50 years. I would like to underline that better regulation is not an end in itself. It has also become one of the key drivers of our growth and jobs strategy. I say that very often, and you might know that if you ask European entrepreneurs what the most important obstacle for doing business in Europe is, or for doing better business, the answer is always very clear. Too many and too cumbersome legislation. Whether it's right, or whether it's true or not, I mean, but this is the answer. That is the answer you get. And if you ask them if they had wish-free policymakers in the European Union and what that wish would be, they tell you less and better regulation. It is obvious. With the strategy for growth and jobs, we aim to do for the European economy what business leadership does for the company. Make it ready for the future and keep it competitive and strong. Why? Quite simply so that Europe can deliver to its citizens a high standard of living, more and better jobs, and an economic and social system in line with our preferences, not against the background of growing competition in a globalized economy. I was invited to present today the role of the European Commission in delivering better regulation and to say if the results match up to the recommendations of the 2001 Mandelkern report. In single terms, my answer would be yes, and we have by far exceeded expectations. However, I very much welcome this opportunity not only to take stock of the achievements of this Commission, but also to address the current challenges that we are still facing in our efforts to improve the regulatory environment for citizens and businesses. Let me take a brief look at the distance we have already covered to arrive where we are today. Efforts to improve the regulatory environment obviously predate 2001. Simplification was, for instance, seen in 1985 as a prerequisite for the completion of the single market. The 1993 Maastricht Treaty was another clear turning point. The principles of subsidiarity and proportionality were given a new status, and the Commission was obliged to report annually to the European Council on better lawmaking. In 2000, the Union set itself a new goal for the decade: to prepare the transition to a competitive, dynamic, and knowledge-based economy. As part of what became known as the Lisbon Strategy, the European Council asked the Commission, the Council and the Member States, each in accordance with their respective powers, to simplify the regulatory environment, including the performance of public administration. Thus, the Commission presented in July 2001 concrete proposals for better involvement and more openness of stakeholders, as well as for better regulatory design, implementation and enforcement at EU level. Parallel, the Member States decided to set up a high-level consultative group chaired by a senior French civil servant, Monsieur Dieudonné Mandelkern, which released, I do not know what it says, express himself, Mandelkern, I guess. German. Dieudonné Mandelke, which released its final report in November 2001. The Mandelkern report identified 6 main aspects of a successful better regulation program. First, better policy implementation options. Second, regulatory impact assessment of new measures. Third, consultation. Number 4, simplification of existing legislation. Number 5, access to regulation. And number 6, effective structures and a culture of better regulation. While the Commission had taken a number of initiatives in response to this report already prior to the beginning of this college, the exercise remained primarily a rather technical and bureaucratic exercise and lacked political commitment and strategic momentum. President Barroso and I therefore decided to incorporate better regulation as a pivotal element of the revitalized Lisbon strategy, recognizing the wider benefits of this exercise for the EU's economy and more generally society as a whole. By 2005, it had become clear for the present Commission that the Lisbon strategy needed to be revitalized and refocused on the key challenges of today, namely competitiveness, growth and jobs. This change of approach was demonstrated in March 2005 when the Commission adopted a communication on better regulation, jobs and growth. The focus was on improving European and national regulation in order to better stimulate European competitiveness without jeopardizing the EU's global approach to better regulation. This was also the time when I first announced the Commission's intention to reduce administrative burdens, the first step being to launch a pilot phase to test methodology and develop a common EU approach. I would now like to give you an update on the 3 main pillars of the better regulation strategy, i.e. the simplification rolling program, the action program for reducing administrative burdens, and last but not least, the impact assessment system. Let me start with simplification. Until the beginning of this Commission, simplification was primarily an issue of accessibility or legibility of EU legislation. However, President Barroso and I also wanted to ensure that the simplification work would reduce the cost of regulation and the cumulative impact of individual pieces of legislation. The reason is simple. Due to the nature of the EU legislative process, notably the negotiation of necessary compromises within and between the Council and the Parliament, texts are not always as consistent and coherent as they should be. Such inconsistencies can lead to divergent interpretations amongst member states and lack of clarity for operators. With time, certain areas of legislation have become real legislative mazes. The area of waste is a telling example of how legislation has piled up over the last 30 years. Individually, each of these acts at time of adoption was no doubt designed to offer an efficient regulatory framework. But taken together, these rules no longer represent a consistent, effective and lean regulatory environment. The Commission Simplification Rolling Programme, launched in October 2005, has now reached cruising speed. The Commission has presented some 113 already of the total 162 proposals to be prepared from 2005 to 2009. Simplification is also now delivering tangible and substantial results which demonstrate that the Commission is effectively delivering on its commitments. Simplification initiatives of major importance for citizens and companies have been proposed by the Commission, for example, Solvency II for insurance firms that operate in the European Union, computerized reservation systems, and rules governing electronic communication networks and services. Progress has also been made on proposals which were pending before the co-legislator, the repeal of pre-packaging requirements and the adoption of e-customs, which will create a European electronic system for data exchange, are good examples of this progress. This new electronic scheme, by the way, will boost international trade and save businesses €2.5 billion annually. Another example also includes the single payment area in the European Union, which alone could save the European economy up to €28 billion billion euro. In parallel, the Commission is also completing an ambitious screening of the entire body of community law, the so-called acquis communautaire, in order to feed the next update of the simplification program foreseen for early 2009. This is a major task requiring a careful examination of about 80,000 pages of legislation built up over the last 50 years. Independent of the proactivity of the Commission, let me be very clear that the full benefit of the simplification program will only be reaped when the proposals currently pending before the co-legislators are adopted and implemented in the Member States. For Council and for Parliament, the challenge is therefore to step up the pace of adopting simplification proposals. As we speak, 51 simplification proposals are still pending before the European Parliament and the Council, and these 51 too many. I will now turn to the Commission's second major initiative, targeting overburdensome regulations, reduction of administrative burdens. Let me begin, however, by stressing that contrary to widespread belief, the regulatory environment for companies in Europe consists still mainly of national rules. I must confess that I was surprised myself to learn that. Not only technical requirements, but also labeling obligations, authorization procedures, and other administrative requirements primarily come from purely national regulations. I admit, however, that it has taken some time, some would perhaps say too long, for EU policymakers to realize that unnecessary filling in forms or reporting the same information twice is neither conducive to business activity, never mind to the overall image of the European Union in Europe. The Commission is therefore engaged in an unprecedented effort to measure and reduce administrative costs in the European Union, and the work on 13 so-called priority areas is quite advanced. This is the action program for reducing administrative burdens in the European Union. As you know, we aim at no less than a 25% reduction of administrative burdens on businesses in the European Union over the next 5 years. Economic studies suggest that such a reduction could raise the EU's GDP by 1.5% in the medium to long run. Expressed in euro, we are talking about adding an extra 150 billion euro to our GDP. So this has definitely a strong macroeconomic dimension. It's much more than the community budget for 1 year. Let me stress at this point that we do not call into question the underlying objectives of the legislation. Quite the contrary, we aim solely at eliminating unnecessary red tape. This is a very important point because in some quarters here in Brussels and in member states, there is an accusation, or at least an allegation, that this is another proof of devilish neoliberal activities of this Commission. This is a terrible act of deregulation. I don't think that we are speaking about deregulation here. We are speaking about more efficiency and reducing unnecessary burdens. So this, of course, inclines that if you say they are unnecessary burden, you accept that they are also necessary burdens. So we are not acting against the idea of having clear rules for the business operators. The idea is just to make it as easy as possible, as efficient as possible, in particular as cost efficient as possible. In order to deliver rapidly and efficiently, we have presented 2 packages of fast-track actions in 2007 and 2008 that will cut several billion euro of administrative burdens in the very short term. With these 2 packages, the Commission has shown its determination and willingness to react quickly and decisively if need be. We have called on the European Parliament and the Council to adopt their legislative procedures to quickly adopt these and other measures that will follow, and to continue to call upon them. As to date, it is fair to say that fast track appears to refer to the speed in which the Commission is working, and not necessarily the speed in which the co-legislators are adopting our proposals. In March 2007, the European Council invited the Member States to set similarly ambitious reduction targets at national level by 2008. Here's another success story. You might not believe it, but it's true. To date, already 17 of the Member States have already set such targets, and several others are preparing to follow suit. So I expect that all the 27 will do it. That means we have a very broad movement all over Europe to reduce unnecessary administrative burdens. Results from our work are now pouring in. Our consultants have completed the mapping of the main EU information obligations and will finalize their costing by the end of the year. This will allow us to identify the cost reduction measures and ensure that the proposals needed to reach the 25% reduction target at the community level will all be tabled by the end of this Commission. So this is something that I have discussed with José Manuel Barroso last week, and he made it very clear that for him this is a question of the legacy of this Commission. And he made it very clear that has to be delivered, meaning we have still 14 months to deliver possibly hundreds and hundreds of proposals, which, by the way, have also to go through the high-level group of independent stakeholders, which we have established upon request of the European Parliament, and which Dr. Stoiber, the former Bavarian Prime Minister, shares. I know that some people here in Brussels were a little bit critical about this. When last Friday in Munich, Edmund Stoiber handed over the Franz Josef Strauss Prize to Jean-Claude Juncker, he made a very moving speech, I must say, and a very interesting one. And he said, I made a lot of mistakes in the past dealing with Europe. I have learned a lot, and I'm now a convinced European. So after working 6 months with the European Commission, which is not always the best experience to become a convinced European, as you know, I found this very remarkable. And I must say, the energy, the emphasis which he is working, I think we have made a good choice. So just to make you to let you understand how it works. So first, the Commission will identify the legal acts which we need to change. I need to convince my colleagues, the responsible commissioners, because normally not in my area of responsibility, to develop the options. Then we will give them to the high-level group, and they will examine them, and with their recommendation, to be very precise, what they give us is a recommendation. With their recommendation, we will take the final decision in the Commission whether we make the proposal or not. We are still discussing a proposal. We are not discussing final legislation. The final responsibility is the responsibility of the co-legislative Council and Parliament. And whether the project at the end of the day will be successful or not is not in my hands. Or not in the hands of the Commission. I know that very well. Therefore, I just to cover myself, I say I would say that I have delivered what I have promised when the Commission has delivered what the Commission has promised when the proposals have left the Parlement and are sent to the Parliament and to the Council. It will make an important difference, and I would like to use the opportunity to make a remark that is not foreseen here in my notes, but it's a very important one. If you ask who the beneficiaries are of the whole exercise, I would say not so much the multinational big European companies, not Bertelsmann probably, or Siemens or Daimler. Well, they also have some benefit, but for them, the regulations which we have are not a real problem. The target group is a big number of European SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises. But we have 24 million of them. 24 million. They count for 66% of the jobs in the European Union, and more than 50% of the GDP, produce more than 50% of the GDP. The reality of life for a normal European employee is not working with Airbus or the European Commission. It's working in a small, family-owned, traditional business with less than 10 people. That is the reality. The economic reality is also that we cannot expect that big traditional manufacturing industries in Europe, where we're still very strong and will remain strong, will maintain the workforce that we have in the European Union. What we can easily foresee is that these companies will continue to grow and to make profits, but the jobs will be created and the growth will be created more and more outside Europe. That's obvious. And don't complain, by the way. But there will be the question, how do we compensate for the loss of jobs that will inevitably come, or that we are seeing it already? And the only way to compensate here is to improve the conditions for doing business in the sector of SME, to encourage entrepreneurship, to help them to start up a business, help them to flourish and to grow. This is, and here I can close the circle. I've told you at the beginning that if you discuss, especially with people who are running a business or want to run a business, how important the regulatory environment for them is, how much it can encourage a person to run a business, how much it can discourage a person to do it. So it has a meaning in the context of probably the most important question which we as European policymakers have to answer. Citizens ask us, what is the European Union in order? French policymaker would probably say to protect us. I would prefer to say to help us to overcome or to tackle with the challenges of a globalized economy. And there is an answer. Our answer is on the table, and this is part of the answer to make us fit for the future. Let me turn now briefly to the last main component of our better regulation approach, the reinforced impact assessment system. By no means do I need to stress here that a healthy and stable regulatory environment is of paramount importance for European businesses. If not devised and implemented carefully, even new regulations can have undue negative effects. It remains the responsibility of European policymakers to carefully strike a balance when correcting market failures. Impact assessments play an indispensable role in this respect, which brings me to the last point. As you know, the Commission has significantly strengthened central oversight of its impact assessment system. Impact assessments are a powerful tool that can provide key insights to support the policy-making process. Impact assessments have been now for more than 2 years required for all proposals in the Commission's legislative working programme. So far, we have carried out 241 impact assessments, more than half of which were of this year. While we have made significant progress in establishing the culture of conducting impact assessments, there is no doubt that we need to further improve their quality. The Impact Assessment Board scrutinizes the quality of the impact assessment at a draft stage, that is before they are finalized. After doing so, the Board issues an opinion as to whether the degree of analysis in the impact assessment is proportionate to the potential impacts. The Board may also provide advice on methodology and approach at the early stages of preparation. By scrutinizing and, if considered necessary, the Board may seek input from external expertise. I'm happy to report that this is indeed now happening. The members of the board consist of high-level officials selected on the basis of their expert knowledge and experience. The task is rather an ambitious one. The board is likely to have to look at as many as 200 impact assessments this year. To ensure that the board works independently of departmental influence, it was established under the direct authority of the President of the Commission. Whenever the College is adopting a new initiative with an impact assessment, the board's opinion will accompany the file. Consequently, the opinion of the board will also be made public, so that the other institutions and the stakeholders, indeed everyone else, can verify how the advice has been taken on board. However, we should not forget that the quality of the Commission's impact assessments is first and foremost dependent on input gathered from stakeholders. Let me elaborate a little bit more on this point, which I believe is also a crucial one. The Commission has increased its efforts in the consultation process, and the way in which we consult was put on a much firmer footing. For example, there is now a mandatory 8-week consultation period for all public consultations. According to this rule, the Commission organized last year 129 internet consultations via the web portal Your Voice in Europe. Moreover, there has been a change in the culture or attitude towards conducting consultations in favor of taking a more proactive approach. We consult more and we consult better. The feedback from our stakeholders has been generally very positive, showing us that they recognize the improvement that we have made. We are nevertheless aware that we must constantly strive to improve the system. One aspect of the improvements we are putting in place is the revision of our guidelines on impact assessments. We still reinforce guidance on issues such as subsidiarity, national and regional impacts, and specific impacts such as on SMEs and consumers. Given that the involvement of stakeholders in the impact assessment process is essential, we launched a public consultation on the revised guidelines in June. The other institutions have also made commitments to improve the quality of the legislation finally adopted by the legislature. In this respect, the implementation of the common approach to impact assessment agreed in 2006, and in particular the possibility for the Council and the European Parliament to carry impact assessment on their substantive amendments to the Commission's proposals, is crucial. The Commission has taken 2 important steps in this area. First, in the second strategic review for better regulation, we made clear our commitment to ensure that impact assessments take better account of issues that are likely to be raised in Council and Parliament. For example, the choice of instrument for EU action. In addition, while these assessments are intended in the first place to guide Commission decision-making, we do our best to constructively respond to any requests to Council and Parliament to expand on aspects of the original assessment. And second, we are also reviewing with Council and Parliament the common approach to impact assessment, which we agreed in 2006 with the aim of identifying where progress can be made. All 3 institutions together need to ensure that the common approach is fully implemented. I think it is fair to say that Council and Parliament still have some way to go, and the Commission will, of course, do all it can to share its experience and expertise with them. We hope to conclude this review before the end of the year. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, I believe that I could demonstrate that the Commission was and is serious about better regulation, and that it has quite well matched up to the Mandelkern principles. We managed to implement them pragmatically, adapting them to the particular settings of EU institutions and to the new challenges of a globalized economy, especially since 2005. We have fleshed them out with practical content thanks to the Simplification Rolling Programme, the Impact Assessment System, and the Action Plan to reduce administrative burdens, but finally, thanks to the commitment that was eventually becoming stronger and stronger in the ranks and files of our institution. Thank you very much for your attention.